The night of our anniversary, my girlfriend dragged a suitcase out the door and said she had to work late. At 3 in the morning, I saw her on her first love's Instagram feed. By a bonfire, she was leaning into his arms, smiling like the whole world was hers. The caption, she said if I ever really wanted it, she'd drop everything to be with me. My hand trembled as I liked the post. 30 seconds later, my phone started blowing up with her calls. This time, I wasn't going to listen to any more explanations. Chapter 1. The Anniversary Emergency. It was 7 o'clock, the sky just bruising into twilight. Ethan stared into the oven at the caramel-topped soufflé, adjusting the angle of the serving dish for the third time. The dining table was covered with Chloe's favorite forest green tablecloth. The candles, a honey-scented set they'd picked out at IKEA last year, were lit. He even had her favorite French indie playlist humming softly in the background. His phone screen lit up. A message from Chloe. Almost home. I'm starving. It was followed by a cute cat emoji begging for food. A smile tugged at Ethan's lips. He sent back a simple waiting for you sticker and turned to check on the soup. The short ribs and corn chowder bubbled in the Dutch oven, its rich aroma filling the whole apartment. He did a quick mental calculation. This was their 5th anniversary. It deserved a little ceremony. The sound of the key in the lock turned just as Ethan was carrying the soufflé out from the kitchen. You're back, he said, his voice full of warmth. I simmered these ribs for 4 hours. You have to smell this. The words died in his throat. Chloe didn't look at him or at the carefully set table. She was pulling a 24-inch rolling suitcase behind her, the wheels making a dull, heavy sound against the hardwood floor. She was still in the gray power suit she'd worn to work that morning, but her hair was a little messy and her lipstick had faded, leaving her washed out and exhausted. No, not exhausted. It was indifference. What are you? Ethan set the dish down, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. Chloe parked the suitcase by the entryway and bent down to change her shoes. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like a scene in a movie playing at half speed. When she finally looked up at him, her eyes were flat, like she was looking at a piece of furniture. Something came up at work, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. I have to fly out for an emergency trip. We'll have to skip the anniversary. Ethan stood frozen, the wadded-up paper towel still clutched in his hand. A business trip? He repeated, as if the words were in a foreign language. Now? It's 7:30 at night. Yeah, it's urgent. Chloe walked past him, heading straight for the bedroom. The suitcase wheels rumbled again, a low thud-thud-thud across the wood floor, over the tiles he'd just cleaned, and over the sweet, cloying notes of the French pop song still playing in the living room. Ethan followed her into the bedroom. He watched her swing open the closet and start pulling out clothes. A sweater, a pair of jeans, underwear, her skincare bag. Her motions were swift, efficient, like she'd rehearsed them. Where are you going? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. Atlanta, she said without looking up. For how long? Depends on the situation. What project is so urgent? The sound of the suitcase zipper being pulled shut was harsh and loud in the quiet room. It sounded like something tearing. It's complicated, you wouldn't get it. She snapped the suitcase shut, stood up, and finally met his eyes. I have to go. I'm running late. I made dinner, Ethan said. He heard his own voice, dry and rough like sandpaper. Chloe's gaze drifted past him to the living room. The candles had already burned down a little, wax pooling at their base. The soufflé had collapsed, a sad, deflated heap on its plate. The steam from the chowder had long since dissipated, a thin film of fat congealing on the surface. You eat it, she said, then grabbed the handle of her suitcase and walked out. Ethan didn't move. He watched her go to the entryway and slip on her heels. He watched her smooth her hair in the mirror, her eyes catching his for a fleeting, empty moment. He watched her pull open the door, and just as a gust of cold air swept in, she said, I'll call you when I land. The door clicked shut, not a slam, but a crisp, clean sound. So clean that Ethan felt it didn't come from the door, but from somewhere deep inside his own chest. He stood there for a full 5 minutes before slowly walking back to the living room. The food was cold. The candles flickered, their flames dancing and stretching his shadow long and distorted against the wall. Ethan sat down and picked up his fork, prodding a piece of short rib. It was tender, falling apart at the touch. He put it in his mouth. It tasted like nothing. His phone buzzed. He pulled out. Chloe had sent him her location. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. It came with a message, boarding now. Talk when I land. Ethan stared at the pin on the map for a long time. Then he put down his fork and started clearing the table. The chowder went down the drain, the ribs into the trash, the collapsed souffle joining them. As he washed the dishes, the rush of water filling the silence, he suddenly remembered their anniversary last year. Chloe had linked her pinky with his. From now on, we have to spend this day together, every year. Pinky promise. Her eyes had crinkled into crescents when she smiled. Ethan turned off the faucet and dried his hands on his jeans. The overhead lights felt too bright, so he switched them off, leaving only the soft glow of the floor lamp by the couch. He collapsed onto the sofa and turned on the TV. Some reality show was on, a group of people laughing hysterically. Ethan watched the screen, but none of it registered. He picked up his phone, opened Instagram, and went to Chloe's profile. She posted earlier that day, at 3 p.m., a picture of a conference room with the caption, "Another day, another brainstorm." A mutual friend had commented, "Working hard." Chloe had replied with a flexing bicep emoji. Ethan stared at the post, his thumbs scrolling up back to this day last year. They had gone to the beach. In the photo, their cheeks were pressed together, their smiles so wide you could see every tooth. Chloe's caption, "Year 4 with this goofball." He kept scrolling. The year before, and the year before that. Every anniversary, a post. But not this year. The canned laughter from the TV grew louder, grating on his nerves. Ethan turned it off. The silence that rushed and was absolute. So quiet he could hear the low hum of the refrigerator, the faint footsteps of the upstairs neighbor, the sound of his own breathing. He lay on the couch and closed his eyes. He didn't know how much time had passed when his phone buzzed again, skittering across the glass coffee table. Ethan opened his eyes and reached for it. A notification. He unlocked the screen, tapped it, and froze. It was from Chloe's ex-boyfriend from high school, a guy named Leo Vance. He just posted on his Instagram. The timestamp, 3:02 a.m. It was a nighttime photo, but perfectly clear. The deep indigo sky was littered with stars. A bonfire crackled in the foreground, sending sparks into the air. Beside the fire, two people were huddled close. So close their clothes were pressed together. The woman was Chloe. She was wearing a cream-colored knit sweater, her hair loosely pinned up. Her face was turned to the side, her eyes fixed on the flames. And she was smiling. Not her polite, professional smile, or the tired smile she gave him after a long day. This was a smile that lit up her entire face, that poured out from her eyes. A smile of pure, unguarded happiness. She was leaning on the shoulder of the man beside her. And the man was Leo. His arm was wrapped around her shoulder, his chin nearly resting in her hair. He was smiling too. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. She said if I ever really wanted it, she'd drop everything to be with me. Ethan stared at the picture for a long time. So long the screen went dark, and he had to press the button to light it up again. And again, he examined it so closely he could see the slight pilling on Chloe's sweater, the tiny mole on her earlobe, the shadow of her eyelashes in the firelight. He could even see the hand Leo had on her shoulder, the long fingers, the neatly trimmed nails. So that was it. An emergency at work. An urgent business trip. Atlanta. Running late. All the scattered pieces clicked into place, forming a picture he never wanted to see. First, there was a hollow feeling in his chest, like something had been scooped out. Then came the pain. Not a sharp, stabbing pain, but a dull, heavy ache like a boulder was pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. Ethan sat up, gasping for air in the dark. The yellow light from the floor lamp cast his trembling shadow, huge and monstrous, on the wall. He picked up his phone, looked at the picture one more time. Then he lifted his thumb and tapped the small heart icon. Almost instantly, his phone erupted with a shrill ring. The screen lit up with her contact photo, a smiling selfie she had set herself, and the name, Chloe. Ethan stared at the smiling face for 3 long seconds, letting it ring. Just before it went to voicemail, he swiped to answer. Ethan, let me explain. Chloe's voice crashed through the speaker, frantic and breathless. He could hear the wind whipping in the background. It's not what you think. We were just hanging out with some old friends. He happened to be in town. How's the weather in Atlanta? Ethan cut her off, his voice unnervingly calm. The other end went silent. A few seconds passed. Chloe's voice was smaller now, uncertain. It's fine. Are the stars nice? Ethan, don't be like this. Is the fire warm? I was feeling stressed. I just needed to get away for a bit, and I was afraid you'd overthink it. So you lied to me, Ethan finished for her. Only the sound of her ragged, suppressed breathing came through the phone. Ethan looked out the window. The sky was still dark, but a faint, bruised gray was beginning to show on the eastern horizon. The streetlights below were still on, casting blurry halos on the damp pavement. Chloe Miller, he said, using her full name for the first time in years. Yeah, she whispered. We're done. He didn't wait for a response. He ended the call, switched his phone to silent, and placed it face down on the coffee table. The screen lit up a few more times with message notifications. He ignored them. He stood up, walked to the window, and lit a cigarette. He'd quit a while ago, but he kept a pack in a drawer for emergencies. This qualified. He was halfway through the cigarette when the phone started vibrating again. A call. The name, Chloe, pulsed on the screen. Ethan glanced at it, let it vibrate. It stopped, then started again. Stopped, then started again. A silent, desperate battle. Finally, he picked it up. Just as his thumb hovered over the answer button, he pressed decline instead. He opened his messaging app, found her conversation. The last message was from the day before, her text saying, I'm craving your chowder tomorrow. Ethan began to type, slowly, deliberately. I threw out the chowder. Threw out the ribs, too. You don't have to make up excuses anymore. Let's just end this cleanly. He hit send. Then he muted her conversation. After that, he stubbed out the cigarette and went to take a shower. The hot water beat down on his head, running over his face and neck. He closed his eyes, but the image was burned into his mind. The bonfire, the stars, her smile as she leaned on another man's shoulder. So a person really could live in two different stories at the same time. In one story, she was in a conference room brainstorming on a business trip to Atlanta, working hard for their future. In another, she was under the stars by a bonfire, leaning on someone else's shoulder, saying she'd drop everything if he just asked. Ethan turned off the water and grabbed a towel. The mirror was fogged over. He wiped a clear spot and saw his own red-rimmed eyes. He tried to smile, but his mouth wouldn't cooperate. Back in the living room, the phone had vibrated again. He walked over and saw a long message from Chloe. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. It was a moment of weakness. I swear nothing is going on with him. We're just old friends catching up. Please don't do this. We've been together for 5 years. You can't just break up with me. I'll be back tomorrow. We can talk in person, please. The next anniversary, I promise I'll be there. I swear. Ethan read the whole thing, then exited the conversation without replying. He opened his contacts, found her number, and blocked it. He went back to his messages, blocked her there. Opened Venmo, blocked her. Opened Amazon, blocked her. He went through every app he could think of where they were connected and, one by one, blocked her. By the time he was finished, the sun was up. Gray morning light filtered through the window, illuminating everything in the living room. The half-burned candles, the dirty dishes he hadn't put away, the collapsed souffle in the trash. Ethan sat down on the couch and stared into space. Then he picked up his phone, opened Instagram, and found Leo's post from that morning. He looked at the photo again, at the caption, at the likes and comments from their mutual friends. Someone had asked, Yo, you two back together? Leo had replied with a shushing face emoji. Ethan tapped the comment box and started to type. He wrote something, then deleted it. Wrote something else and deleted that, too. Chapter 2. The e-tickets in the drawer 3 days after blocking Chloe. Ethan took his vacation days. He had to move. They'd rented this apartment for 3 years, and every corner of it was filled with their shared life. The pink bunny slippers by the door, the 2 toothbrushes side by side in the bathroom, the fridge covered in magnets from their trips. It used to feel like home. Now, every object was a tiny needle, pricking him when he wasn't looking. Packing felt like performing an autopsy on their relationship. He had to take out all the sweet, warm, intimate memories one by one and sort them. Keep, toss, or burn. Well, you couldn't burn things anymore. You had to sort them for recycling. Ethan sat on the floor, flanked by 2 large cardboard boxes. One was labeled Keep, the other Toss. The Keep box currently held a single, empty photo album. The Toss box was nearly full. He started in the living room. The coffee table drawer was a mess of junk. old movie ticket stubs, expired restaurant coupons, a map from a hiking trip, and a few arcade tokens from some forgotten date night. Ethan scooped it all up and dumped it into the toss box with a clatter. When he stood up, he banged his knee on the corner of the table and winced. An old injury. Chloe had slammed the door during a fight once, and he'd caught his leg trying to stop her. She'd cried and apologized, rubbing it for half an hour. Looking back, he should have billed her for it. The bedroom was ground zero. Her clothes took up 2/3 of the closet space. Dresses, blouses, and coats, all meticulously organized by color and season, at her insistence. "It's more calming to look at," she'd said. Ethan methodically removed his own clothes, folded them, and packed them into moving bags. He moved slowly, as if disarming a bomb. He paused when he got to her cream-colored knit dress, the one she was wearing in the bonfire picture. It was soft and still held the faint scent of the Gardenia laundry detergent she always used. He took it off the hanger, ready to toss it, but hesitated. He hung it back up. Whatever. She could come get her own stuff. He was done with her. He didn't need to be her damn moving service, too. The nightstand was the last battlefield. The top held eye drops, hand cream, melatonin, and a few bestsellers she'd never finished. Ethan swept them all into a plastic bag, planning to leave it for her. He hesitated before opening the bottom drawer. She usually kept it locked. Her important things drawer, she called it. The key was normally on her keychain, but she must have forgotten to lock it in her rush to leave. The small key was still in the lock, dangling. Ethan stared at the key for a long moment before reaching out and turning it. There wasn't much inside. A velvet jewelry box, a couple of old passports, a stack of passport photos, and a large manila envelope tucked underneath. Ethan pulled out the envelope. It was light, the contents rustling inside. He sat cross-legged on the floor and emptied the envelope onto his lap. The first thing to fall out was a small, dark blue velvet box. His stomach clenched. He opened it. Empty. It wasn't a ring box, just a regular jewelry box. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, then felt ridiculous for his own relief. Next were a few greeting cards, birthday wishes from high school friends, and under those a neat stack of printed e-ticket confirmations. Ethan picked up the one on top. The date was March 15th of last year, the day after Valentine's Day. The flight was from New York to New Orleans. Passenger name, Chloe Miller. Beside, it was another confirmation for the same date, the same flight. Passenger name, Leo Vance. His fingers felt stiff. He slowly flipped to the next one. July 6th of last year. New York to Miami. Chloe Miller. Leo Vance. November 20th of last year. New York to Austin. Chloe Miller. Leo Vance. January 3rd of this year. Right after New Year's. New York to Aspen. Chloe Miller. Leo Vance. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them booked for 2 people with adjacent seats. They spanned an entire year, occurring every 2 or 3 months like clockwork. The destinations were all over the country, but the passengers were always the same. Her and him. Ethan sat perfectly still. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, glinting off the papers, the bright white stabbing at his eyes. He could see his own shadow cast over them, trembling with each breath. So business trip had more than one meaning. It could mean brainstorming in an Atlanta conference room, or it could mean eating beignet in New Orleans, watching the sunset in Miami, waiting in line for barbecue in Austin, or laughing in the freezing cold of Aspen. Ethan laid the flight confirmations out on the floor like a deck of cards, arranging them in chronological order. Then he picked up his phone, opened his text history with Chloe, and started searching keywords. He searched for business trip. The conversation scrolled upwards rapidly. Have a business trip this week. Back in 3 days. March 12th of last year. Something came up. Have to fly out. Won't be back this weekend. July 3rd of last year. Problem with the project. Have to go out of town for a bit. November 18th of last year. Have to travel right after New Year's. Might be a week. January 1st of this year. He had replied to every single one. What had he said? Be safe. Don't forget to eat. Come back soon. Miss you. And her? She'd replied, so tired. The food here sucks. Miss you too. It's almost over. It's almost over. Ethan stared at those words and let out a short, harsh laugh. The sound echoed in the empty room and shattered on the floor. Yeah, it was almost over. Every time her little vacation with someone else was almost over, she remembered the fool waiting for her at home. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his college roommate, Mark Davis, a guy who talked like a machine gun. Ethan, we're getting drinks. My girlfriend broke up with me. It was followed by 3 crying emojis. Ethan replied, funny. Mine did too. The response was instant. WTF? I thought you two were about to cross the 5-year finish line. We did. She defected to the other side. What does that mean? Chloe cheated on you? Ethan stared at the word cheated. His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before he typed. Not really. Just took a few cross-country trips with her ex, watched the stars, said some stuff like I'd drop everything for you. The message sent. The other end was silent for a full 3 minutes. Then his phone rang. It was Mark. Ethan, where are you right now? His voice was uncharacteristically serious. Home. Packing. Stay put. I'm on my way. 20 minutes. No, 15. Don't you fucking move, just wait for me. He hung up. Ethan tossed his phone onto the couch and went back to staring at the flight confirmations. He picked up the most recent one, Aspen, January 3rd. What was he doing that day? Oh, right. He'd worked until 10 p.m. On his way home, he texted her, asking how her trip was going. She said she was still busy, would talk later. He believed her. He even stopped at the grocery store to buy her favorite brand of fancy frozen pizza, thinking she'd be hungry when she got back. The pizza sat in the freezer until it got freezer burn. She never came home that weekend. Now he knew. That night, she was in Aspen in sub-zero weather, looking at ice sculptures and eating gourmet food with another man, smiling from ear to ear. A frantic knocking echoed from the front door. Ethan opened it to find Mark, out of breath, and holding 2 12-packs of beer. Where is she? Where's Chloe? He demanded, his eyes scanning the apartment. She moved out. Son of a bitch. Mark slammed the beer on the floor and rolled up his sleeves. Who's the guy? Where does he live? I swear to God I'll go over there and break both his legs. The image made Ethan laugh, a real laugh that shook his shoulders. He pointed to the papers on the floor. Take a look at these first. Mark bent down and picked them up one by one. As he read, his expression shifted from rage to shock, from shock to disbelief, and finally settled on a look that said, Am I going crazy? This is all Chloe. He held up the Aspen itinerary. With that Leo guy? Her ex from high school. Yep. This started last March. Yep. Like, every few months? Pretty much. Mark collapsed onto the floor, sending a few beer cans rolling toward the wall. He ran his hands through his hair, over and over, as if trying to scratch an idea out of his head. Dude, Ethan, how did you not notice anything? Ethan sat down next to him and cracked open a beer. Foam fizzed over his hand. He licked it off. It was bitter. She said she had a business trip. I believed her. She said she was working late. I believed her. She said she was tired and wanted to sleep early. I believed her. He took a long swallow, the cold alcohol burning a path down his throat. I'm such an idiot, right? You're a fucking idiot. Mark grabbed a beer for himself. Dude, I'm not trying to kick you when you're down, but this isn't a business trip. This is a goddamn cross-country affair tour. It was crude, but it was true. Ethan tipped his head back and finished the beer, crushing the can in his hand and tossing it into the toss box. It landed with a loud, satisfying clang. So what now? Mark asked. You gonna confront her? Punch the guy? Or, I'm moving out. Ethan stood up, brushing the dust off his pants. The lease is up at the end of the month. I'm not renewing. As for her stuff, he gestured around the room. If she wants it, she can get it. If not, it's getting tossed. And that's it. What else is there? Ethan looked at him. Get on my knees and beg her to stay? Go find this Leo guy and get into a fight and hope that makes her come back to me? Mark went quiet, nursing his beer. They sat in silence for a while. The sun began to set, casting a warm, orange glow through the windows, bathing the room in a false sense of peace. The light reminded Ethan of an evening last fall. He and Chloe had been curled up on the couch, watching a movie. Her head was on his shoulder, her feet in his lap. She'd fallen asleep halfway through, her soft breaths warming his neck. He hadn't dared to move, sitting perfectly still until the movie ended, his shoulder completely numb. Back then, he thought he could live like that forever. It was good enough. Now he realized it was probably only good enough for him. Hey, Mark said suddenly. Remember last November, we had that get-together, and Chloe said she had to go out of town for a training seminar? Ethan nodded. Well, Our buddy Kevin said he thought he saw her at the airport that night with some guy. We all laughed at him, told him he was seeing things. We said she was in Philly. She even posted her training schedule on Instagram. Mark's voice got quieter as he spoke. Looking back, Kevin probably wasn't seeing things. Ethan didn't reply. He walked to the fridge and pulled open the freezer. In the very back was a box containing the fancy frozen pizza, now over a month old and covered in ice crystals. He took it out and opened it. The contents were frozen solid, a grotesque, icy corpse of cheese and pepperoni. He walked to the trash can and threw the whole thing in, box and all. It landed with a dull thud. "It's tossed," he said, not to anyone in particular. Mark came over and clapped him on the shoulder. "Hard. Once, twice. Where are you moving? Found a place yet?" "Looked at a few spots, haven't decided. You can crash on my couch for a while if you need to. It's big enough." "No, thanks." Ethan shook his head. "I can handle it." "Handle my ass." Mark glared at him. "Look at you. You look like your soul's been sucked out." Ethan managed a small smile and didn't argue. He walked to the window and looked down at the street. Rush hour. The flow of cars was a river of light, moving slowly. Everyone was in a hurry to get home, to a place where someone was waiting or where they were waiting for someone. He used to be one of them. "Mark," he said suddenly. "Yeah. How much does someone have to not love you, to be able to live with you and date someone else at the same time?" Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The question was brutal, a knife twisted. Finally, he said, "It's not on you, man. It's on her. She's messed up." Ethan smiled again. He turned, his back to the window, his figure silhouetted against the deepening twilight. "I know. I was just curious. Curious about all those times over the past year. She texted me, 'Miss you.' Who was she really thinking of? I was curious if, when we were eating dinner, or watching a movie, or even, if his face ever flashed in her mind." He spoke slowly, calmly, as if telling someone else's story. "But then I figured it out. It doesn't matter," he said, pausing. "It's like you bite into an apple and find half a worm. You don't wonder how long the other half has been living inside you. You just think, next time I better check the apple before I buy it." Mark stared at him for a long moment, then raised his beer can. "To checking the apple." Ethan raised his own can. "To checking." The cans clinked. They drained them and tossed the empties into the trash, where they joined the freezer-burned pizza. Night had fallen. Ethan turned on the lights, filling the room with a harsh, white glare. He knelt and resumed packing. This time he was much faster. No more looking, no more thinking. Just grab, sort, toss, or keep. A heartless machine. Mark helped, packing books from the shelves and wrapping dishes in newspaper. They made small talk about work, about sports, about a new barbecue joint that had opened up, about anything but Chloe, Leo, or the stack of e-tickets. It wasn't until they were clearing out the study that Mark found something in the bottom drawer of the desk. "Ethan," he said, his voice strange. "This thing, you still want it?" Ethan turned. Mark was holding a picture frame. A simple wooden frame with a photo inside, from the beach trip last summer. He had his arm around Chloe, and they were both grinning at the camera, the setting sun and the ocean behind them. At the bottom of the photo, Chloe had written in a silver pen, "Year 4 with this goofball." Ethan walked over, took the frame, and looked at it for 3 seconds. Then he walked to the window, slid it open, and threw the frame out. It arced through the air and disappeared into the night. A few seconds later, a faint, sharp shattering sound drifted up from below. The sound of something breaking so completely it could never be put back together. "I don't want it," he said, closing the window. Chapter 3. The pin contact. The day after he threw out the picture frame, it rained. A miserable, persistent drizzle that wasn't heavy enough to be a downpour, but was annoying all the same. Ethan sat in the passenger seat of the moving truck, watching the wipers swish back and forth like a tireless metronome. The driver was a talker. He'd been going on since they left about how moving in the rain was the worst luck, and how young people these days break up over nothing. "Just yesterday, I moved a couple. Married 3 years, getting divorced." The woman was crying so hard her makeup was running down her face, the driver said, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "You too, buddy. Break up." "Yeah," Ethan said, his eyes on the window. "Tough break. Saw your stuff, all neat and packed. You seem like a guy who's got his life together," the driver sighed. "Hard to find a good woman these days. One who wants to build a life with you, even harder." Ethan didn't answer. He watched the raindrops trace paths down the glass, like tears. But the glass wasn't crying. He was. The new apartment was in an old building, a fifth-floor walk-up. The mover's heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell, setting off the motion sensor lights. Ethan stood downstairs, smoking under the awning as a light mist drifted in, cool against his face. His phone vibrated incessantly in his pocket. He pulled out an unknown number from a New York area code. He declined the call. A few seconds later, it rang again. Declined. Again. Finally, he answered, saying nothing. Ethan. It was Chloe's voice, hoarse, as if she'd been crying. Don't hang up. Just let me say something. Ethan stubbed out his cigarette in a nearby bin. Go on. I'm downstairs at your place. I mean our old place. I brought you breakfast, those everything bagels you like from downtown. They're still warm. She spoke quickly, afraid of being cut off. Can we please just meet? For a minute? 10 minutes? 5? I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. Her voice rose, then dropped to a pleading tone. Ethan, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Just give me a chance to explain in person. Please? I'm begging you. Ethan watched the rain. A stray cat, soaked to the bone, darted across the street. It looked pathetic. But you couldn't take in every pathetic stray, he thought. It might scratch you, piss on your couch, eat all your food, and then run off with another cat. Chloe, he said, his voice flat. I saw the plane tickets. The other end of the line went dead silent. He could hear her sharp, shaky intake of breath. It's not what you think. Her voice was a whisper, like air leaking from a balloon. Then what is it? Ethan asked. Was it a platonic friendship that required monthly cross-country flights? Did your deep, meaningful bond have to be nurtured by staring at the stars with his arm around you? We're just friends, I swear. She was crying now, real sobs. I was just so stressed out, I needed to get away, and I was afraid you wouldn't approve, so you lied. Ethan interjected. For a year. 4 times. Every single time you lied. Chloe, when you lie to my face, does your conscience even twitch? When you see me texting you every day, asking if you got to the hotel, if you'd eaten, if you were tired, did you ever think to yourself, wow, this guy is so easy to fool? No, I never thought you were a fool. Then what did you think I was? Ethan let out a dry laugh. A backup plan? An ATM? A butler you could summon whenever you felt like it. No, I love you, Ethan. I only love you, she cried, her voice shrill. With him, it was just nostalgia. It didn't mean anything. I swear, nothing happened between us. We just talked, looked at the sights from a hotel room. We got 2 separate rooms. Oh, Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. How chaste of you. Did you talk through the walls? Or did you stay up all night chatting in the hallway? About the stars, the moon, poetry, the meaning of life. Ethan, she screamed. That's enough, he cut her off. Eat the bagels yourself. I've already eaten. And by the way, I've moved. Don't go back there again. Moved? What did you move? Why would you? Because I don't want to come home every day and see your things and be reminded of how you lied to me, Ethan said slowly, enunciating every word. I'm not a masochist. The only sound from the phone was her muffled sobbing. Ethan felt a pang of something soft in his chest, but it hardened just as quickly. A crocodile's tears were still tears, he reminded himself, but that didn't mean it wouldn't eat you. By the way, he said suddenly, in your contacts, the one pinned to the top, that's Leo, right? The crying stopped. The pinned one, Ethan continued. My contact name is just Ethan Clark. Very descriptive. The star gets all the romance. The Clark gets to pay the bills. A clear division of labor. I like it. You. How did you know? Her voice trembled. When I was packing yesterday, I saw your iPad. You left it behind. It was still logged into your account. Ethan's voice was cold. I was going to turn it off for you, but the screen lit up with a notification. And there it was. Hey, how romantic. Should I thank you for not saving my name as the landlord? It was just... I just typed it randomly. What a coincidence. Ethan glanced at the time. I've got things to do. I'm hanging up. I packed up all your stuff and left it with the super at the old building. The key is there too. Don't contact me again. Ethan, don't. He hung up and blocked the number. The motion was becoming second nature. The rain was letting up, softening to a fine mist. Ethan wiped his face. He couldn't tell if it was wet from the rain or something else. He turned and headed upstairs. The movers were just carrying the last box down. The new apartment was empty. A 400-square-foot studio with stark white walls and cardboard boxes piled on the floor like unsolved puzzles. Ethan knelt and started unpacking. Clothes into the closet, books onto the shelf, dishes into the kitchen. He moved like a robot, one task at a time. He paused at the last box. It wasn't labeled keep or toss. He found it in the back of the study closet at the old place. He meant to throw it out, but on some strange impulse, he'd brought it with him. He opened it. Inside was a collection of odds and ends. A few old photo albums, a stack of postcards, some stuffed animals, and a small, rusted tin box. The box had a faded cartoon character on it, something Chloe had used to store trinkets in high school. Ethan opened the box. Inside, a couple high school pins, a rusty key, and a few curl Polaroids. The photos were of young faces, 16 or 17, dressed in school uniforms, their smiles carefree. One was of Chloe and Leo. They were standing on the edge of a track field, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, the setting sun behind them. On the back, in bubbly, teenage handwriting, it read, "First date with Leo. Together forever." Underneath, in newer ink, another line had been added. Too bad forever didn't last. Ethan stared at the words for a long time. He put the photo back, closed the box, and walked to the window. It faced another apartment building, so close he could see a family of 3 eating dinner in their living room. The dad was serving food, the mom was pouring soup, and a little kid was laughing. A perfectly normal scene. A world away, his phone buzzed. A screenshot from Mark. It was an Instagram post from Leo, an hour old. A photo of a latte, captioned, "Some people you lose for a lifetime, but sometimes you get a second chance." A mutual friend had commented, "Oh, what's this?" Leo had replied with a blushing emoji. Mark sent a voice note, his voice tight with anger. "What the hell is this asshole's problem? Is he trying to provoke you?" "Ethan, don't stop me. I'm going to find out where he lives. Don't." Ethan texted back. "It's not worth it. Not worth it? He's rubbing it in your face. If a dog bites you, do you bite it back?" Ethan typed, "It's beneath you." Mark sent back a series of ellipses. Then, "Fine, you're the bigger man. But I just heard something, not sure if I should tell you." "Tell me." "So, Chloe's mom called my mom yesterday." Mark's voice was awkward. "She wanted your number, asked you to call her. I told my mom to say you were busy moving." Then her mom started crying, saying Chloe hasn't eaten or slept in days, that she's lost so much weight, and that you're being too cruel, throwing away 5 years just like that. Ethan didn't reply. He walked back to the tin box and took out the Polaroid again. 16-year-old Chloe, her eyes shining, her face full of the certainty that her world revolved around one person. He pictured that face and superimposed the contact name over it, the smile by the bonfire, the stack of plane tickets. It all formed a net that was tightening around him. He picked up a pen, and under the line, "Too bad forever didn't last," he added his own. "No, it didn't." Then he tore the photo, not in half, but into tiny, confetti-sized pieces, and dropped them in the trash. They fluttered down like a miniature snowstorm. He sat down at his laptop. A few unread work emails. He opened them and started replying, the sound of his typing echoing in the empty studio. After clearing his inbox, he opened a real estate website and browsed listings in his neighborhood. Then, on an impulse, he opened LinkedIn and updated his profile. He was an architectural designer and had been at his current firm for 5 years. It wasn't a bad job, but it wasn't exciting either. It was like a glass of lukewarm water. It quenched your thirst, but it had no flavor. Chloe used to say she liked that he was stable. Now he wondered if, to some people, stable was just another word for boring. He sent his resume to a few firms that looked interesting. Then he closed the browser and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked, waiting. He typed a title, 5 years. And then he stopped. What was there to write? How they met, how they got together, how they planned their future. Should he write about her favorite foods, the way she curled up when she slept, how she was always grumpy when she woke up, about the places they'd traveled, the fights they'd had, the promises they'd made? Forget it. He hit the delete key, erasing the words one by one. The past should stay in the past. Like the freezer-burned pizza, the shattered picture frame, the torn-up photo. Keeping it around would only poison the present. Outside, it was getting dark. The The rain had stopped. A hazy moon was visible. Ethan stood up and stretched, his joints popping. He realized he'd been sitting for hours. He went to the small kitchen, heated some water, and made a cup of instant ramen. Beef flavor, the classic broke and lonely meal. While he waited for it to cook, he leaned against the counter and looked out the window. The family across the way was watching TV now. The kid was jumping on the couch, the dad was laughing, and the mom was peeling an apple. It was mundane, trivial, and real. Ethan remembered when he and Chloe used to be like that. On weekend nights, they'd curl up on the couch to watch a movie, her with a bowl of popcorn, him with a beer. She'd laugh so hard she'd fall into his arms, hide her face in his shoulder during scary parts, and wipe her tears and snot all over his shirt during sad ones. Back then, he thought that was forever. The ramen was ready. He peeled back the lid, and a cloud of steam fogged up his glasses. He took them off to wipe them, and his movements slowed. There was moisture on the lenses. He thought it was steam, but it wouldn't wipe away. Whatever. He put his glasses back on and started eating. The noodles were a little soggy, but they were edible. He ate methodically, as if completing a ritual. Halfway through, his phone vibrated. A text. Unknown number, but he knew who it was. Ethan, I'm downstairs at your new place. I know you don't want to see me, but I just want to say one thing. I kept the tickets, yes, but I wasn't the one who initiated it. He booked them every time and sent me the confirmations as a memento. I admit I was weak and didn't refuse, but I swear I never did anything to betray you. Please, just believe me one last time. Ethan put down his chopsticks, walked to the window, and looked down. The streetlights in the old neighborhood were dim, but he could see a figure standing below. A small, thin person in a light-colored coat, looking fragile in the night wind. She was looking up, but her gaze was unfocused, as if she didn't know which window was his. Ethan watched her for a moment, then drew the curtains shut. He went back to the table and finished his ramen, slurping down the now lukewarm broth. He picked up his phone and replied, It's pointless for you to stand there. I'm not coming down, and I'm not seeing you again. It doesn't matter who booked the tickets. What matters is that you went. You went, and that was your choice. You made your choice, and I've made mine. That's all. He hit send and blocked this number, too. He washed his single bowl and single pair of chopsticks and put them away in the empty cabinet. It looked sparse, but he thought, maybe empty is better. At least it was clean. At least nothing would jump out and stab him. He took a shower, the hot water turning his skin red. As he dried his hair, he looked at his reflection. His eyes were a little swollen, and a dark stubble was emerging on his jaw. He looked tired and worn out, but at least he looked like himself. He got into bed and turned off the light. Darkness flooded the room. He stared at the blank, white ceiling. It wasn't like the one at his old place, which Chloe had insisted on covering with glow-in-the-dark stars. She'd said it was romantic. Now there's just darkness. Nothing to see, nothing to think about. The phone screen glowed. A message from Mark. Her mom called my mom again. Said Chloe's been standing downstairs for 2 hours, crying her eyes out. You're really not going to go down? Ethan replied, No, you're a cold man. It's not about being cold. Ethan typed slowly. It's about being done with the pain. The speech bubble indicated Mark was typing for a while. The final message was simple. All right, get some sleep. You got work tomorrow. Yeah. Chapter 4. Her regret. His rebirth. Chloe stood downstairs until the middle of the night. Ethan knew because he woke up at 3 a.m. for a glass of water and peeked through the blinds. The pale figure was still there, pinned under a streetlight like an insect on a board. The wind was picking up, whipping her hair around her face. She looked pitiful, but Ethan didn't go down. He drank his water, went back to bed, and pulled the covers over his head. When he couldn't sleep, he counted sheep. He was on sheep number 1003 when the sun came up. The next day was Monday. Work. Ethan got up, showered, shaved, and dressed. His face in the mirror was a little puffy, but his eyes were clear. He tried to force a smile, but it looked worse than a grimace. He took the back exit out of his building, a narrow alley lined with breakfast stalls just opening for the day. The sound of frying dough and the smell of sweet soy milk filled the air. He bought a fried cruller and a cup of soy milk and ate as he walked. The cruller was perfectly crispy, the soy milk just sweet enough. At the subway station, his phone buzzed. A screenshot from Mark. It was Chloe's Instagram story, posted at 4 a.m. A photo of his old apartment building, taken from the street below. The windows were dark, the street light casting a sickly yellow glow. The caption was 2 words, "I'm sorry." There were dozens of replies from friends asking what was wrong. She hadn't responded to any of them. Ethan swiped away the notification. The train arrived, and he squeezed into a crowded car. He held onto a pole and watched the ads flash by outside. One was for a cosmetic surgery clinic, featuring a smiling celebrity with an impossibly smooth face. The slogan read, "A brand new you. A brand new you." Ethan mulled over the words. When he got to the office, Kevin, the guy from the cubicle next to him and the office's central gossip hub, leaned over conspiratorially. "Ethan, you here? Chloe called in sick today." Ethan grunted a non-committal and opened his email. "Said she has a fever," Kevin whispered. "But she sounded like she'd been crying." "You guys fight?" "We broke up," Ethan said, his eyes fixed on the screen. "What?" Kevin's jaw dropped. "Seriously? After 5 years? How could you just break up? What's the alternative?" Ethan turned to him. "Wait another 5. Kevin stared, speechless, and retreated to his cubicle. Ethan went back to his emails. A client was demanding revisions on a project proposal, and he didn't have time for anything else. At lunch, Mark texted again, "Chloe's mom ambushed my mom at her weekly bridge game." It was followed by a facepalm emoji. Ethan sent back a question mark. "She demanded my mom give her your new address. My mom said she didn't know. So she started crying, saying her daughter was becoming depressed, wasn't eating or drinking, just saying her name over and over." Mark's voice note was layered over the sound of shuffling cards. "My mom almost caved, but I stopped her. I told her, 'Andy, stay out of other people's relationships. You'll just get burned.'" "Thanks," Ethan replied. "Don't thank me. I just think she made her bed. Now she has to lie in it." "But seriously, man, you're not wavering at all? It sounds like she really gets—" Ethan put down his fork. The cafeteria food was too salty today. He took a long drink of water. "Getting it and changing are 2 different things," he typed. "It's like knowing smoking is bad for you, but you can't quit. She knows lying to me was wrong, but the next time Leo snaps his fingers, she'll still go running." "You're that sure?" "I'm sure," Ethan replied instantly. "Because for 5 years, she never saw a problem with maintaining that kind of relationship with her ex. I brought it up, we fought about it, and in the end, she always said I was overthinking things. It's not that she can't change, it's that she doesn't think she needs to." Mark sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Clarity. That afternoon, Ethan presented his revised proposal in a meeting. His slides were clean, his delivery was confident, and his boss was impressed. After the meeting, his boss pulled him aside. "You've been doing great work lately, Ethan. Keep it up." Ethan smiled, but said nothing. He knew his state of mind was far from great, but at least he could act the part. That's what being an adult was, right? Functioning on the outside while you were falling apart on the inside. Before he left work, his phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Familiar message. "Ethan, I'm outside your office. I'm not leaving until I see you." Ethan checked the time. 5:20 p.m. He shut down his computer, packed his bag, and headed downstairs with his coworkers. The elevator was packed, a mix of perfume, sweat, and takeout food. He stood in the corner, watching the floor numbers descend. The doors opened on the ground floor. The crowd surged out, and Ethan moved with it. Through the glass doors of the lobby, he could see her. Chloe. She had lost weight in just a few days. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. She looked like a piece of paper that could be blown away by the wind. She saw him, and her eyes lit up. She hurried toward him. His co-workers saw her too. Their steps slowed, their gazes flickered between the two of them. Kevin pretended to tie his shoe, squatting down to get a better view. "Ethan." Chloe grabbed his sleeve, her voice raw. "Let's talk. Just for 5 minutes." Ethan pulled his arm away. "We said everything that needs to be said." "No, we haven't." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't let me explain. He was the one who booked those tickets. I didn't know how to say no. I was scared you'd get mad, that you'd overthink it, so I hid it from you. But nothing happened between us. We're just friends. Do friends wrap their arms around each other to watch the stars?" Ethan cut her off. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone nearby heard. Kevin was now on his 8th attempt at tying a perfect bow. Chloe's face went white. That was the angle of the photo. Do friends say, "If I ever really wanted it, You drop everything to be with me? He said that, not me. But you went, Ethan said, his gaze steady. You went, Chloe. He posted it, and you were there. He reached out his hand, and you took it. That was your choice. Her lips trembled, and fat tears rolled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Ethan, please, give me one more chance. The last one, I promise. You've made a lot of promises, Ethan said. You promised you wouldn't meet up with Leo alone. You promised you wouldn't text him late at night. You promised you wouldn't lie to me. Did you keep any of them? She was speechless, her mouth open, but no words coming out. I'm not your garbage can, Ethan continued, his voice quiet but firm. You don't get to dump your trash on me whenever you feel like it, then walk away, only to come back when you need something. I'm not that pathetic, Chloe. His words were harsh. He heard a few gasps from the onlookers. Chloe's face cycled through shades of white, red, and purple. She grabbed his arm again, her nails digging into his sleeve. How can you say that to me? 5 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It did, Ethan said, looking directly at her. That's why I put up with it for 5 years. But feelings can be exhausted, Chloe. They're like a glass of water. Every time you pour a little out, and a little more, eventually it's empty. He pried her fingers off his arm, one by one. She held on tight, her nails leaving red marks on the back of his hand. But he didn't stop until her hand fell away. Go home, he said. Don't make a scene here. It's embarrassing. With that, he turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He didn't hesitate. He walked away as if from a total stranger. Behind him, Chloe started to wail, loud, desperate sobs like a child who had lost their favorite toy. A few co-workers moved to comfort her, but others held them back, shaking their heads. Ethan walked to the subway station, swiped his card, and waited for the train. His reflection in the window was emotionless. The scratches on his hands stung. He deserved it, he thought. He had let this happen. The train arrived. He got on and found a corner to stand in. His phone buzzed. A video call from Mark. He answered. Mark's face filled the screen, the boisterous bridge game in the background. Dude, Ethan, Kevin just told me what happened. That was epic. That line. I'm not that pathetic, priceless. He said. Chloe's face just crumpled. Ethan aimed his phone's camera at the ceiling of the train. If you have a point, make it. No point, just wanted to congratulate you. Mark chuckled. But for real, did you not feel bad at all? Kevin sent me a picture. She looked wrecked. I felt bad before, Ethan said. But after the feeling passes, you still have to live your life. I can't feel bad for her and sentence myself to a life of suspicion and self-doubt. I'm tired, Mark. I'm just so tired. Mark's laughter died. After a few seconds of silence, he said, I get it. Hey, want to come over tonight? I'll order us some wings. Extra spicy. Fight fire with fire. Can't. I have a meeting. With who? A new girl? A recruiter, Ethan said. A firm is trying to poach me. The offer looks good. Going to check it out. Hell yeah, Ethan. That's what I'm talking about. A brand new you. A brand new you. The phrase from the ad again. Ethan ended the call and opened his messages, scrolling through his conversation with the recruiter. She was enthusiastic, said she'd seen his portfolio and was very impressed. They were meeting at a coffee shop at 7. He texted back a confirmation, then, on impulse, opened his conversation with Chloe. Even though he'd blocked her, the chat history was still there. He scrolled up, way up, to when they first started dating. She used to be so talkative then, a little chatterbox. She'd send him pictures of her food, tell him about her day, even send him photos of weird cats she saw on the street. He'd reply to every single one. If he was too slow, she'd get mad and bombard him with emojis. When did that change? Her messages became shorter, her replies slower. The reason was always busy, tired, talk tomorrow. He thought she was just stressed from work. Now he knew. She wasn't busy. She was just giving her words, her time, her energy to someone else. Ethan exited the chat and deleted the entire conversation. It wasn't out of anger. It was just unnecessary. It was like a scab. You had to rip off the bandage. It would hurt, but leaving it on would only slow the healing. His meeting with the recruiter went well. It was a boutique design firm, smaller than his current company, but working on more interesting projects. The salary was a 30% increase. After an hour, they agreed to set up a second interview with the partners. It was after 9 when he left the coffee shop. The night air was cool. Ethan zipped up a jacket and walked slowly down the street. He passed a flower shop that was closing for the night. The florist was throwing unsold flowers into a bucket. Roses, lilies, baby's breath, all of them wilting. Like love past its expiration date. He kept walking. He stopped at a convenience store for a bottle of water. At the counter, he saw the hot food display, steam rising from the soup. He paused for a second, then just paid for his water and left. Outside, he twisted off the cap and took a long drink. The cold water was refreshing. His phone rang. Chloe's mother. Ethan stared at the number for a long moment before answering. Hello, Mrs. Miller. Ethan, her voice was thick with tears. Please, Ethan, I'm begging you, just see Chloe. She really knows she was wrong this time. She hasn't eaten or slept. Mrs. Miller. Ethan interrupted gently. This is between Chloe and me. Please don't worry about it. How can I not worry? She's my only daughter, she sobbed. Ethan, you've been together for 5 years. You can't just throw that away. Chloe was foolish. She made a mistake, but she loves you. She doesn't care about that Leo boy anymore. It was just a moment of weakness. Mrs. Miller. Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. If she loved me, she wouldn't have lied to me over and over again. If she loved me, she wouldn't have ditched our anniversary to be with someone else. If she loved me, she wouldn't have saved my contact as Ethan Clark while saving his as a... Chloe's mother stopped crying. For 5 years, I gave her everything, Ethan said. I was serious about our relationship. I planned for our future. I worked hard to build a life for us. And what did she do? She treated me like a safety net, a backup plan, an insurance policy. Mrs. Miller, a person's heart isn't made of stone. It can hurt and it can give up. The other end was silent for so long that Ethan thought she had hung up. Then, her voice raspy, she said, I understand. Ethan, Chloe wasn't good enough for you. You, take care of yourself. You too, ma'am. After he hung up, Ethan stood on the street corner and let out a long breath. It fogged up in the streetlight and disappeared. He felt light, as if a massive weight he'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. The process of lifting it had torn off some skin, and it was raw and bloody. But at least now he could stand up straight. He walked home, climbed the 5 flights of stairs, and unlocked his door. The apartment was dark. He flicked on the light. The room was still sparse, but today he bought a small pothose plant and put it on the windowsill. Its green leaves looked vibrant and alive. He watered the plant, took a shower, and got into bed. His phone was silent. No one else called. He scrolled through the news, watched a few videos, and turned off the light. He fell asleep quickly and deeply. For the first time in a long time, he didn't dream. The next day at work, Kevin approached his desk, hesitant. Before he could speak, Ethan said, We broke up. We're not getting back together. Don't ask again. Kevin nodded meekly and retreated. That afternoon, Ethan received a long text message from Chloe. Ethan, I've been thinking a lot, and you were right. I was selfish. I took your kindness for granted and never considered your feelings. The trips were my mistake. I was greedy. I wanted the stability you offered and the excitement he represented. I always assumed you would be there, so I was careless. I understand now that no one waits around forever. I'm not asking for another chance. I just hope you can be happy. I've packed up all your remaining things from the apartment and left them with the super. Take care. Ethan read the message and deleted it. Then he opened his laptop and started writing his letter of resignation. It wasn't an impulsive decision. He'd been thinking about it for a while. 5 years at the same firm had felt like being a frog in slowly boiling water. He'd lost his edge, his passion. He used to think stability was enough. Now he knew. Stability wasn't about staying still. It was about knowing what you wanted and having the foundation to go after it. He wrote quickly. 10 minutes later, he printed it, signed it, and walked into his boss's office. His boss was surprised. He tried to convince him to stay, offering a raise, a promotion. Ethan just smiled and shook his head. It wasn't about the money. He needed a change of scenery. He felt a sense of relief as he walked out of the office. Back at his desk, he started packing his personal belongings. Kevin came over, his eyes wide. Ethan, you're really leaving? Yep, I'm out. Where are you going? Got another job lined up? Edo. Where? Do they pay well? Ethan clapped him on the shoulder. I'll let you know. He didn't have much stuff. It all fit into one box. His co-workers gathered around to say their goodbyes. Ethan smiled and said he'd keep in touch, though he knew he probably wouldn't. That was another part of being an adult. Most goodbyes were silent. He carried the box downstairs and paused in the lobby. Outside, the sun was shining. The streets were bustling with people, all of them heading somewhere. He remembered 5 years ago, on a similar afternoon, he'd walked into this building for an interview, carrying a portfolio instead of a box. He was fresh out of college, full of ambition. Then he met Chloe, and stability became happiness. And then stability became numbness, and happiness became a habit. Now, he was holding a box again. It felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because it held fewer things, heavier because it held 5 years of his life. He pushed open the door and stepped outside. The sunlight felt warm on his face. He took a deep breath. The air smelled of city trees, car exhaust, and the hot dogs from a street vendor's cart. It was a messy, chaotic smell, but it was real. He pulled out his phone and texted Mark. "Wings tonight. My treat." Mark replied instantly. "Hell yeah. To celebrate your new single life, your new freedom, your brand new you." Ethan smiled. "Nah," he typed back. "Just celebrating a craving for wings." Chapter 5. Friends need to have clear boundaries a year later. Late autumn. The city felt like it had been steeped in cold tea, the air crisp and filled with the sharp, earthy scent of decaying leaves. Ethan stepped out of the office building, pulling the collar of his coat tighter against the wind. The streetlights were already on, their orange glow pooling on the pavement. "Mr. Clark, over here." The window of a black sedan rolled down, and his assistant, a young man named Tom, waved at him. Ethan nodded and get in. The car was warm, a welcome relief from the evening chill. "Straight to the venue?" "We have enough time if you want to go back to the hotel and change," Tom said as he pulled into traffic. "Let's just go straight there." Ethan glanced at his watch. 6:20 p.m. The Urban Design Summit started at 7, and he was one of the keynote speakers for the second half of the evening. His new firm was treating this as a major debut for him. They'd been preparing for a month. The car merged into the rush hour traffic. Neon lights from the skyscrapers bled across the windows. Ethan leaned back and closed his eyes. The past year had been on fast forward. New job, new projects, a promotion. He'd been spinning like a top. It was exhausting, but it was a good kind of exhaustion. The kind that came from building something, from feeling your feet firmly on the ground. The car pulled up to the convention center. The lobby was bright with chandeliers and filled with elegantly dressed people. Ethan straightened his suit, took the speaker badge from Tom, and went inside. The main hall was massive. He was guided to his seat in the front row, exchanging polite nods with a few familiar faces from the industry. The summit began. A spotlight hit the stage, and the first speaker began his presentation. Ethan listened, occasionally jotting down notes. His own speech was about a small-scale community revitalization project. It wasn't a grand, sweeping vision, but it was grounded in practical details that he had spent 6 months perfecting. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A picture from Mark. A bubbling pot of spicy hot pot. The caption, "Eating this in your honor." "It's amazing." Ethan smiled and sent back a drooling emoji. As he was about to lock his phone, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure sitting a few rows behind him. He paused, but didn't turn around. During the intermission, people began to mingle. Ethan went to the restroom and then stopped at a refreshment table in the hallway for a glass of water. As he turned, he almost collided with someone. "Sorry," he said, stepping aside. He looked up and froze. It was Chloe. She was frozen too, a cup of coffee in her hand. A few drops sloshed over the rim onto her hand. She was wearing a professional, pale gray suit. Her hair was shorter, tucked behind her ears. She was wearing makeup, but it couldn't hide the fatigue in her eyes. Her face was thinner, her chin sharper. "Ethan," her voice was raspy. "Hey." Ethan nodded, his tone as casual as if he'd run into an old coworker. "You're here for the summit?" "My company sent me to learn," Chloe said, her fingers picking at the paper cup. How have you been?" "I'm good," Ethan said, taking a sip of water. "You?" "I'm okay." Her answer was vague. Her eyes scanned his face, as if searching for something. "You look different." He was a little different. The past year had leaned him out, his features more defined. His eyes had changed, too. They used to be soft, almost hazy. Now, they were clear, direct. "Probably the haircut," Ethan said dismissively, checking his watch. "My talk is in the next session. I should go prepare." "You're speaking?" Chloe's eyes widened slightly. "Yeah, second half. Just a small project." "That's great." Her voice trailed off, then she spoke again, a sense of urgency in her tone. Ethan, I've always wanted to apologize to you. I was so foolish back then, so selfish. I broke your heart. I've regretted it every day since. I really have. It's in the past. Ethan cut her off. His voice was gentle, but it carried an unmistakable finality. There's no need to bring it up again. Chloe's words caught in her throat. She looked at the man in front of her, so familiar and yet a complete stranger. The way he used to look at her, with a warmth that seemed to spill from his eyes, was gone. Now there was just the calm, placid surface of a deep lake. Do you still hate me?" she asked, her voice trembling. No, Ethan shook his head. Hate takes too much energy. I'd rather spend that energy on a new design. He said it lightly, almost as a joke, but to Chloe, it felt like a needle prick to the heart. She would have preferred his hatred, his anger. At least that would mean he still cared. But this was indifference. He had moved on, shedding their past like a layer of dust. Someone called his name from down the hall. A staff member was looking for him. Ethan answered, then nodded at Chloe. "I have to go." "Ethan," Chloe called out, stopping him. He paused and turned back. "Can we?" She clutched her coffee cup, her knuckles white. "Can we still be friends? Just normal friends. Grab dinner sometime, catch up." Ethan looked at her. A year had passed. She seemed to have both changed completely and not at all. The confident, spoiled light in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cautious, pleading vulnerability. He suddenly remembered her looking at him the same way. Years ago, her eyes shining as she said, "Ethan, let's be together forever." Forever had been so short. "I don't think that's a good idea," Ethan said, his voice quiet but clear. "In my world, friends need to have clear boundaries." He gave her a small, sad smile that was gone as quickly as it appeared. "And in your world, it seems like the concept of boundaries doesn't really exist." With that, he turned and walked away. His steps were steady, his back straight, as he disappeared into the bright lights at the end of the hall. Chloe stood rooted to the spot, the coffee in her hand, now completely cold. The paper cup was misshapen from her grip, and brown liquid seeped through, staining her fingers. She didn't move. She just stared at the empty hallway, at the sterile white light from the ceiling. His words echoed in her mind. "In my world, friends need to have clear boundaries." She remembered him saying something similar a long time ago. She had been texting Leo late one night, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Ethan had woken up and asked who she was talking to. "A friend," she'd said. "What kind of friend do you talk to until 3 in the morning?" he'd asked. She had gotten angry, called him possessive and insecure. "What's the big deal about talking to a friend?" she'd snapped. He hadn't argued further. He had just given her a long look, a look of disappointment and exhaustion, like a teacher looking at a student who just wouldn't learn. Now, she finally understood. But by the time she did, the teacher was long gone. A round of applause came from the hall. The second session was starting. Chloe walked mechanically back to her seat in a far corner. She hadn't even planned on coming today. A coworker had mentioned a rising star in design was speaking, and on a whim, she'd signed up. Now she knew who that rising star was. The spotlight came on again. Ethan walked onto the stage, poised and confident in his tailored suit. He adjusted the microphone and began to speak. His voice was steady and clear, amplified throughout the hall, carrying a weight of authority. He talked about his community project, about balancing budgets and residents' needs, about breathing new life into a forgotten neighborhood. His presentation was flawless. Chloe sat in the darkness, watching the man on the stage, bathed in light. He was confident, passionate, his eyes shining with a light she hadn't seen in a long time. It was his own light. Not for her, not for anyone else. Just his. She remembered all the times he had tried to talk to her about his work, about his designs, his ideas. She had always listened with half an ear, her mind elsewhere. He would show her his blueprints, and she would glance at them and say, "That's nice." She had thought it was all so boring. Now she realized that was his world. A world he had been building brick by brick. A world she had never bothered to enter. His speech ended to thunderous applause. During the Q&A, someone asked what the biggest challenge of the project was. Ethan paused, then said, "Balance. Balancing the needs of the community, the constraints of the budget, the ideal versus the reality. But the hardest thing to balance is always people. You have to make everyone believe that the change is for the better." As he spoke, his eyes swept across the audience, and for a fleeting moment, They seemed to land in her direction. Her heart leaped, but just as quickly, his gaze moved on, as if she were nothing more than a speck of dust in the crowd. When the event ended, the crowd surged toward the exits. Chloe moved with them, her eyes fixed on the front row. She saw Ethan surrounded by people, exchanging business cards, answering questions. He was patient and professional, a polite smile on his face. She waited off to the side. When the crowd thinned, he finally broke away and started walking toward the exit. "Ethan," she said, stepping in front of him. He stopped. His assistant, Tom, was with him. Tom looked from her to Ethan and tactfully said, "Sir, I'll wait for you outside." "It's fine, Tom," Ethan said, then turned to Chloe. "Yes." His tone was polite but distant. All the words she had prepared vanished. She opened her mouth, and all that came out was, "Your speech was really good." "Thank you," he nodded. "Was there something else?" She took a deep breath. "I wanted to see if you'd let me buy you dinner. As his friends. It won't take long. Just one meal. Please." Her voice was laced with a hopeful plea, her eyes wide like a stray begging for scraps. It was a look that used to work on him every time. But this time, Ethan just shook his head. "I can't. I have plans," he said. He paused, then added, "And besides, we're not friends." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "We're exes. And the best thing for exes is to not disturb each other's lives. To just let each other be." His words were gentle, but they cut like a knife. Chloe's face paled, her hands curling into fists. "Do you hate me that much?" she whispered. "I don't hate you," Ethan said, a small, sad smile touching his lips. "I don't. I'll just move on, Chloe. And it seems like you're still stuck in the past. But I'm sorry. I can't go back there with you." He checked his watch. "My colleague is waiting. I have to go. You take care." He gave her a final nod and walked toward the exit. Tom fell in a step beside him, and she could hear them talking in low voices as they disappeared into the night. Chloe stood alone, a statue in the emptying lobby. The autumn wind gusted through the open doors, chilling her to the bone. She slowly sank to the floor, wrapping her arms around her knees and burying her face. The staff started turning off the lights. One by one, the vast hall was plunged into darkness until she was swallowed by it. She thought about that night, a year ago, when she had walked out with her suitcase. Ethan had been standing by the table he had set for their anniversary. She hadn't looked back because she assumed he would always be there, like a lamp left on in the living room. Now, the lamp was off. No, not off. It was just lighting someone else's way, and she was still standing in the dark. Her phone vibrated in her purse. A message from Leo. "Chloe, I was wrong. Can we please talk?" She stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned off the screen and dropped the phone back in her bag, as if discarding something she no longer needed. She stood up, her legs stiff. She steadied herself against a wall and started walking. The long hallway was empty, her footsteps echoing in the silence. One step, then another like a clock ticking down. She reached the entrance and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit her face. She pulled her coat tight and walked into the darkness. The streetlights stretched her shadow long and lonely behind her. In the distance, a black sedan pulled away from the curb. Its taillights cut two red arcs in the darkness, then disappeared around the corner.